It's working. Okay, let's call this meeting to order. Make sure everybody knows where they are, and this is the Information and Audits Committee. And we're going to go over some of the duties and tasks of what this committee does. And we do have a quorum present. We're a little bit different than most from what I've seen, and it's very diverse, and we're going to be getting some additional guidance with what our duties and tasks are. But let's go over some of the things, and I'm going to read actually from the Rules, Ethics, and Decorum, our rules. And if it's on page 14, Rule 32. It shall be the duty of the Committee on Information and Audits to read the journal of each day's proceedings and report to the House that the same is correct. The report of the Committee on Information and Audits may be made at any time. That's, y'all hear me every morning of session. That's basically our big thing that we do, just to verify it. I think it's important that somebody does. I've asked that the clerk of the House go ahead and send to every member. Do you get this in your email? Have you been getting a copy of the previous day's journal? I've asked them to make sure every member gets a copy so that if something should happen, I'm not there, you will have already received it and had the opportunity to read it. You can also go into the clerk's office. They have it there. I actually prefer to read them myself at home when they email them, but I also sometimes go in the morning just to check. Also, if you'll look on page 11, there is a reference to what the Committee on Information and Audits, it's 17.2. The Committee on Information and Audits shall audit twice yearly the accounts of any caucus of the House which receives state funds. Each caucus to be audited under this rule shall keep detailed records of all expenses and receipts of all monetary transaction. The Committee on Information and Audits shall, before auditing the accounts of any caucus, require of each caucus an itemized statement of such accounts, supported by proper vouchers for each item of such accounts. Now, when you see the auditing and things we're supposed to be doing, I think we wanted to have that cleared up, and we have today with us from the, I think it's Greg Griffin from the auditors. If you could come and address us and tell us a little bit about what your expectations are and what our committee duties are and how you work with us. Thank you.
Good afternoon. As far as committee responsibilities, I mean, we historically, my interaction with this committee has been to serve at your pleasure, and we typically meet with you once a year, and I go over the responsibilities of my department in terms of what we do, what kinds of audits we conduct, and they're typically financial audits of the state agencies and school boards and the university system. So I'm here to answer any questions you might have in terms of if you have any specific questions. But I typically audit agencies and entities throughout the state and not necessarily the legislative side of the House.
Just to make sure and clarify, those nice little reports we get on our school boards and our cities or whatever entity is, that's your department that does
correct.
this?
That is correct.
Can I ask you, where do you get the information to audit a particular agency or group, or is it on a routine scheduled basis?
The information we get, when we decide to do an audit of a particular entity, we will conduct that in accordance with standards. That means we will plan accordingly. We will reach out to the entity and obtain financial records, financial reports to conduct those audits. In terms of which audits we do each year, we look across the state. There are some that are mandated that we do every year, such as large agencies, school boards, university system. We schedule audits based on a risk-based approach. We don't have resources to go to every entity every single year, but we will do a risk analysis and decide where to go each year. And we try to incorporate on a rotational basis a coverage at entities, say over a 3 to 5 year period.
Do you get into auditing the members of the House or the Senate? Anything to do with the General Assembly?
We do not.
Okay. Do y'all have any questions for him? Thank you.
You and I mentioned counties and tax commissions per se. They fall under the purview of your audit process when you could be involved with it.
We have a division that's called the Sales Ratio Division. They prepare the equalized tax digest every year.
Okay.
And so they work with the Department of Revenue in terms of that digest. That digest that we issue every year is used as an input to QBE funding every year.
Thank you.
We have about 30 staff appraisers that go out and work with the Department of Revenue and the tax commissioner offices.
I'm familiar with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that information. If you have, do you have a card?
I do.
Thank you. I'd
Sure.
appreciate that.
Sure.
Thank you.
Members of the committee, you know, when it comes down to your legislative authority, you have quite broad legislative authority, but that doesn't necessarily mean you ought to go out and investigate and audit everything you got. I don't think you'll have enough time to do that during your tenure here in the General Assembly if you took on every cause. And I think a lot of what needs to be done is probably needs to be directed through the chairperson and see kind of what you want to go through and kind of establish a general outline. You do have certain responsibilities. The chair has read those, and that's probably your main focus of what you need to be about here, is reviewing the expense vouchers and reports submitted by members of your chamber, and doing the other things that were listed in the rules for the House. As far as looking at expense vouchers, you can get those reports in as much detail or as little detail as you choose, but once again, the use of your time may be a bit onerous if you looked at every expense voucher that is submitted by every member of the chamber during the course of your year. You're probably going to wear yourself out looking at those things. You can get with your fiscal office, who I see Jennifer's here, and she can certainly give you some guidance as to how best you could spend your time with that. Looking at some outliers, things that are unusual. I mean, in a previous iteration of this committee, I did have a situation the committee investigated that dealt with a member who had turned in a travel voucher for one day, leaving from one destination, going to Valdosta, then to Savannah, then to Augusta, then to Atlanta, and back in one day. And that did seem to kind of raise some eyebrows that the committee thought they should look at, because it seemed just not to be feasible to really go out, travel that much, and actually meet with anybody. But that was kind of an outlier, and it did involve some looking at, and then that was resolved. But those kind of things, I think the day-to-day travel voucher probably, or the day-to-day expense voucher, is not going to be worthy of an individual review, but certainly it's within your purview if you choose to do so. Be glad to answer any questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Do y'all have any questions? Legislative Council. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, and we also have with us Jennifer Sanders, if you'd like to come up and just give a little outline about the information you provide. Either one. You want to sit down at the table or stand at the podium?
Either one, sorry. I think, thank you for clarifying what their roles and responsibilities are. We do, I mean, we have a, offline system in-house where we generate the transactions. I do review every one of those transactions. It's hard at times. They get stacked up, but, we look for outliers. like he mentioned, when it's just not ordinary for someone to travel that many miles. But these members, I mean, they're signing an oath that these expenditures are true in nature, and that's what they incurred. So, as long as they're signing a statement and it's valid, they submit a valid receipt, then we submit payment. For the committee days, I mean, it's very hard. We have different forms that they submit to us. That's our official record. Unfortunately, our system is antiquated at this point in time, so we cannot capture the date that the expense was incurred. That's what we've been working with. Martha has been heading a working group to help move along a process, developing an RFP. I'm working on that now, so we can update our system so we can provide, leadership with those types of questions. According to the code, they do have up into a year and 4 months to submit receipts. So when you get monthly reports and you may see, for example, 35 committee days, those may not have been all incurred, obviously. It's more than a month. It can't be incurred within a month. That is currently the statute, and I follow the statute. So just to let you know, I mean, we are moving towards automation, web-based application that can monitor that, we will have more fields and more information to supply leadership to manage and see where, when are the meetings occurring, how many did they take. But unfortunately right now we don't have that. We can only give you, we're on a cash basis with the reports. And these are all in-house. These are not subject to open records. Correct me if I'm wrong. We house all the receipts in my office. So if there was a request for member ABC to look at, receipts, they would have to make an appointment with me. Member would be notified. Leadership would be notified. So that's kind of the process for member payments. As far as what you guys are doing, I read in the code that you're, supposed to be pulling samples and you have to help me out with this. I don't know if that's required or if that's something subject to your schedule. I've been here 3 years. I haven't gotten that yet. I haven't gotten a request. It's okay. But we spend a lot of time with these receipts. I mean, we have 236 members, of course. We get a lot. We process a lot of transactions weekly, and they are check-based. So that's kind of the gist of how we get an official documentation, original documentation is what I would call it. Review it, process it, issue the check. So that's where we are now. Do you have a specific question about the process? I feel like I'm talking too loud.
Does anyone have a specific question? I will tell you, I'll share with the group that I met with Ms. Sanders, and we went ahead and discussed some of it because I did receive the first set of monthly reports, and everything, the totals in my simplified mind did not work, and I said, wait, this can't be. And it's because it is just on a cash basis. It is not accrued. You cannot allocate it to whichever year it was actually in. And she shared with me that they are looking for and updating the system. Therefore, we will in the future, maybe next year, but we will eventually have those reports so that they can be coordinated. I also talked with the clerk's office to be able to coordinate attendance with payment, and there is no roster right now. It's never kept that way in any one place. Now she does get it. She has the closest thing. The clerk's office, you have to go through every day's journal to see who was present and who was not, and then you have to check it a day or two afterwards because people can send in a letter to say, I wanted to be there, I couldn't be there, and they get an excused absence. And I guess that was part of it. You're paid no matter what the reason for absence is that correct?
Yeah, so essentially we have 3 buckets of pay. We have the expense reimbursement account, which is essentially, you travel, you have incurring expenses for your district or your office. You submit receipts, we reimburse you. Then you have regular per diem. which is if you're traveling in your district or you're having committee meetings, you can submit a form and get per diem and mileage. Then we have session pay, which is only obviously tied to the session. So for every day that a member is in attendance, we shall pay them per diem. And how we collect that information, yes ma'am, we have roll call, we look at journals, we collect this information from both Secretary of State and, Senate and the clerk's office. And then we have an affidavit form in case, perhaps they were here, maybe they didn't vote on a bill. So we collect that information. We're on a lag process. I'm sure all you members are aware. We pay the week later for the previous week. We collect that information, compile it, and see who is eligible based on attendance. And those were the 3 criteria that we use. Then we issue a check, yes.
That helps a lot. I think in the future we will probably be able to have a merged information which will help us to do our job. But right now we will work with the tools primarily in your department.
Yes, and we do consolidate that information.
Thank you. Any additional questions? No? Okay, thank you very much. I do want to share with the committee that we are looking for direction to see how much we are going to do through this committee and how to go forward. We do have the daily task of, and I want to make sure, Chuck, you are receiving every day the journal from the previous day. Okay. It's just if everyone will please be on alert that if you are called to have to be there, if for some reason I'm not there, you would be on the list to be called to make sure you have read it. I think we will probably have an additional meeting once I get a little better direction of where we're going with this group, and I will keep you informed. Any other questions? Then we are adjourned. Thank you.